Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
Pencils, paper, notebooks, iPads. Class is now in session. USAPrepares.com. Educational radio. Set your memory to high power. Your USAPrepares.com instructor, Vincent Finelli, at the controls.
Kurt Wilson's with us, armchair survivalist.com. Also, SE, the number one, .us, SE, the number one, .us. Hey, Kurt, yesterday, I took a pretty long drive in my old pickup truck. And I took the standard cab with the 8-foot bed. And the reason I did that was I wanted to pick up some ramps for our trailer. I found some used ramps on the internet and a couple hours away. And I thought, well, I ought to get these. And I'll tell you why. As you know, we drive old vehicles. And with old vehicles, you have the ability to spend some time checking out the scenery in the countryside, along the ditches and the sides of the road as cars whiz by. And because our car or trucks seem to run downhill more than they run downhill and uphill. So broken down, we have this need to haul some of our vehicles home. And we have this utility trailer, and it'll hold about 8,800 pounds. And we use it for hauling hay, big round bales of hay. Pull it behind the tractor. And it has a 2 5/16 inch ball. And it's a really wonderful trailer. I bought it for $1,500 in the Commonwealth of Virginia decades ago. And it really is a wonderful, heavy, heavy trailer. I thought, well, what do I do? It's kind of tall to take our vehicles home. So I thought, well, let me look on Craigslist and look at trailers. Well, a replacement trailer that's that heavy, if it were relatively new, would be about $4,000. That's out of the question. I could certainly get another trailer, 16-footer, just like this one. Similar because it would have 2 axles and a tongue and that kind of thing and 16 feet of deck. But it would not be anywhere near as heavy. It wouldn't hold as much weight. So I thought, what do I do? I'm not willing to pay the government any more in transfer taxes and those kinds of things. I'm not willing to do that, but I do need to bring my vehicles home as I get stuck on the side of the road. So I found these ramps, and they are 8 feet long, and I thought, all I need to do is have a longer set of ramps. So for $150 for these 2 used ramps, I'm in business, and I can go and bring our vehicles home.
Oh, they're steel, right?
Yeah, they're really, really strong. They probably weigh 80 pounds each.
Are these the ones that have the little raised nipples so that your tires can grip on them?
What they are is they're U-shaped channel that it's kind of like an I-beam almost, but it's U-shaped. And then for the treads, it has angle iron pointed upward, going across. So as you drive up these ramps, it's bump, 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 but it's 8 feet long. Now, an 8-foot long ramp is a really long ramp for a trailer. So the trailer, if I were to stand with my legs at the back of the trailer, it's probably knee-high. The deck is probably knee-high. So an 8-foot ramp is just about enough for me to, if I could drive a vehicle, if the vehicle ran, I could just drive it up. Or I could use a winch and pull a vehicle up on it. Or I might even splurge and buy an electric 12-volt winch for, bringing these vehicles home a little bit easier than I normally do.
We think exactly alike. See, I'm up here in North Idaho. This is the kind of stuff you do. Everybody who's an actual North Idahoan has 2 things on their property. One is a car trailer, and the other is blue tarps.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, blue tarps. I just got back from the Chinese factory tool outlet, Harbor Freight, in Springfield, Missouri, a couple days ago. And we have a neighbor who's a couple years older than we are, loves to come over for coffee. And so he just shows up before the broadcast, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, he just shows up. And it's really kind of a nice, it's a nice treat. And this can happen multiple times per week. And so at his placemat, I had 4 Harbor Freight tarps, the kind handy size, like 5 foot something by 7 foot something.
Yeah.
And I put him on his place, and he said, "What are these?" And I said, "Well, those are for you." And he said, "Well, I don't need this many." So he took 3 of them. Well, they were all for him. I bought like 9 of them, and or 8 or 9 of them. I think maybe 9, because we needed them here too. We throw them over the firewood, if it's going to rain, just enough to keep some of the firewood dry, so it's easier to keeps the creosote down when you have less wet wood. But tarps, how much are they at the Chinese factory tool outlet, Harbor Freight? $2.99 plus local applicable taxes. So they're very inexpensive, and we use them for all kinds of things. So you might want to keep that as a tip that you might want to get some too when they're on sale. We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson, SE1.us. I don't know, Kurt. Hanging around with you, I'm losing my perspective on what things cost in new prices. I just went to the internet and I'm looking at some ramps, So if I were to buy some new ramps, aluminum ramps that are much lighter in weight, that'd be kind of nice in terms of carrying them around. But in terms of driving a tractor on this trail or something, not the way I would want to go. $650. Now, if I wanted to get yeah, I paid $150. Now they're used and they're, a little dinged up. I mean, they're not going to win a beauty contest. However, in terms of a strength, they're superb. But it looks to me like around $750 to $800 is what it would cost for a new set of replacement. If I just said, you know what, I don't like the color of these, or I don't like the shape or the dings, let's get some new ones. About $800, which is crazy. I've got sticker shock, Kurt.
Your trailer, is that dual axle?
Yeah. It's a dual axle. And I wanted to share that with you because I have a question for you about that. Yes, it's a dual axle 16-foot trailer with a 2 5/16 ball. I think it's rated 8,800 pounds. Now, when it was made with the Dexter mobile home axles. Now, from the factory, I didn't put these on. It came from the factory with these mobile home style axles, which is a cast iron wheel, and cast iron hub, and then the rim is separate. It's not like a wheel; it's a rim that it's like a big donut hole, and then it bolts on with I believe five of these locking type bolts, and they don't like them on the road anymore because they say that those particular kinds of rims are dangerous. Now, I've only had it a couple decades. I have never had a single failure ever. And it's the strongest wheel axle combination I can find. Have you heard this? This story about how these are?
I had one. It was 16 foot, and we used to use it to haul a forklift around. And let me tell you the trick. Now you did catch some of it by talking about a winch. So Harbor Freight has a 12-volt winch. It's a 12,000 pounder. Remote controlled, which I hate using a winch where I've got to stand there and hope that cable doesn't snap and cut me in half. So that's why I like the remote control. So that's on the front. Sure. What we do is we back up, we put the trailer where we needed to, and then unhook it. And in the front of the trailer, I have an actual travel trailer. What do you call it? The crank up tube. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And I put the trailer at an almost 45-degree angle.
Right.
All right, and then we would, we had like 4-foot ramps, and you could drive anything you want up onto the trailer, and then we'd time it, and now we'd hook it up with a hoist in the front, okay, and then as we drove it up, we'd loosen the tongue jack is what it's called, tongue jack at the front, and at the same moment, it would drop down onto the ball. So it's a little bit of work. But when you get something that high, I mean, your bed is above the axles, just like mine was. I mean, almost above the tires. So so it's a little bit of work. But when somebody says, "Well, you can't do that," and I get this all the time. "Oh, that won't work. You can't do that." There's 1,000 solutions to any problem. I don't care what it is.
Right.
So there's 1,000 solutions, and that's what makes a survivalist. Is somebody who is able to extrapolate the present time situation and condition and use his accumulated knowledge to come up with variable results and solutions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And that old term, thinking outside the box, that's kind of what we're talking about, thinking different ways of solving that problem. And my solution was pretty simple. For $150, I could get some ramps, and I could do some very interesting things. We have some classic vehicles here that are pretty darn low, and that's a problem. And they all run downhill. I have an old AMX, American Motors, 1968 AMX, and the only thing wrong with it just needs one thing: a gas tank. And you can't get one. So, and I'm not going to put a home fabricated gas tank in the area that is not safe should someone run into the back of the vehicle. I mean, that's my concern there. So it's got to be.
AMX, is that the 2-door, or is that the station wagon?
Well, no, it's a 2-door. American Motors back in 1968 came out with a sports car, 2 seats.
Okay.
And they had a model that was a foot longer. That's called the Javelin. And the Javelin, it was longer, but they took a foot out of the middle of the Javelin, and they called it an AMX. And they put 290, a 343, or a 390 engine in it. You get an automatic or manual. They only made about 7,000 of these total. And when I was very young, there was one that was available for $1,500. And I was plowing snow, and I thought, $1,500. That's unbelievable. And they don't make a lot of these things. Of course, it had broken ring lands, and I had to rebuild the engine. But I've had it ever since. Had it ever since the 1970. And so it's kind of nice. It needs to be reupholstered and all that. But it's I don't know. It's got some sentimental value. So I need a trailer to kind of haul that around sometimes too. But when I get a little more time, maybe I'll finish working on that.
I can tell you where to get a gas tank. I can tell you where you get a gas tank for that.
Really?
Yeah, there's a junkyard in Reno, Nevada that specializes in gas tanks. I had a 71 Chevy C10 that I needed a new gas tank for, and the guy, I pulled up there, and the guy said, "Oh, it's in the back. We don't haul them out. You just go find whatever you want." And I found thousands of gas tanks in the back of the junkyard in cardboard, still in boxes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's we'll talk about that off the air. I can give you the number at all.
Great, and I can report how all that works. So anyway, the bottom line is: have you had experience with this kind of a trailer that had the Dexter mobile home axles that had these very heavy tires that would that say MH for mobile home, and they're not supposed to be used on the road. However, I do have tires that are on these rims that are road tires.
You got some 10 tires on there?
Oh, yeah. Actually, 12s. And what's really nice about it, this is a very, very heavy trailer, and I have never had any problems with it. But I keep hearing people say, "Oh no, those are no good." I don't believe it. I don't believe that.
Well, the only problem they have with those is that if the tire blows, because of the cast iron, it will actually plow the highway.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so just make sure you keep the bearings packed. That's all.
Oh, yeah. And, that's another thing. Why don't we just take a minute and talk about packing bearings? That is something that I'm very concerned about. When I go out on a trip and I'm pulling a trailer, I will jack up the trailer, spin all the wheels, make sure that the bearings sound right, that there's no grit in them. I'll pop the axle hub cap off, and that's that little round 2-inch hub cap. You pull that off, and I look at the grease. And what I use, Kurt Wilson, is I use the red synthetic grease. I can buy that at the Chinese factory outlet, Walmart, and I really like the red grease. And typically what I'll do is put on a glove, one of those latex type gloves or plastic gloves, stick my finger in the tub of grease, which is absolutely clean, no grit in there whatsoever, and I'll put a dab of that on the bearing and add a little bit more, put the bearing cap back on, so there's more grease in there to work its way in toward the bearings. That's the way I do it before I take a major trip, like if I'm going to go 1,000 miles or a couple hundred miles. That's what I do, because the last thing I want is a failure on the bearing surfaces.
Yeah, people just don't check that at all. People don't check that at all. It depends on the unit, what you're using, but yeah, you jack it up. I don't just spin it. I take the tire, grab the top and the bottom, and I wiggle it in and out to see if there's any play in the bearing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. You're right.
Okay,
You're right.
and if there's any play, well, you already have the bearing cap off. So what I do is I take the cotter pin out, I loosen everything, I pull out the bearing, and I double check it. Now you got the inner or the outer bearing, so you know usually you're only checking the outer. And I check it, and if I have to, I'll repack it. Harbor Freight has a bearing repacking tool. I think it's like $5. But I always done it by hand. You know, you grab the goo and you just press it into the bearing. I'll wash the thing off real quick in gasoline or some kind of solvent to make sure that all the grit's out of it or any possibility. Then you repack it, put it back on, you tighten it down snug, and then you back off a little bit. You do not want a bearing to go out. That happened to me up in alongside the road in Oregon in a 1958 milk truck. You start hearing this squeaking sound, and then all of a sudden everything locked up. So I was stuck there, and I had to fix all of this on the road. I had to pull it up, pull the whole thing apart. I had to use my propane torch to heat the bearing up so I could pull the damn hub off. And then I used a flat file to clean up the axle and put it all back together. And yeah, you don't want to have to do that. So a little bit of preventive maintenance and paying attention.
I agree. You know, at the farmhouse right now, it smells like Italian beef. And the reason is before the broadcast, I decided I was going to make some Italian beef. And I've been experimenting with a Dutch oven, or actually the bottom half of a Dutch oven, which is like a 5-quart, I just measured it this morning, about a 5-quart cast iron pot. And so I cut up 3 pounds of beef that I bought yesterday, and I added some spices. And what I started making was Italian beef. And the reason that this happened is our son showed up with this mix in a package of flavoring, if you will, for making Italian beef. And I thought, okay, that's a good start. That's a really good start. We can try that, see if we like it, as long as it doesn't have MSG in it and some other things that we don't like and some other chemicals. That's a good start. But whatever's in there, I think we can do a better job of making it with whatever spices that we already have. And so that's what I did. And here's my recipe, and I want to share this with you. So start with 3 pounds, and what I think the best way to go is an eye round. But this morning I put in 3 pounds of chuck because the butcher said at Sam's Club yesterday, he said this would be perfect. So 3 pounds of chuck, and then I'll tell you the rest of the ingredients that I put in the pot this morning. It's on the stove right now, and about 5 hours from now or so, I think it will be ready. I'll tell you what the recipe is, and I'll tell you what, it is extraordinary. And you may want to try this for yourself, class. Kurt Wilson and I will be right back. So, class, here's the recipe. So I started with 3 pounds of beef. The first time I did it was eye round. This morning it was with chuck. I think I like the eye round much better. But anyway, here it is. So in this 5-quart cast iron Dutch oven with a Revere-ware stainless steel lid, because I don't have the lid for the Dutch oven yet, I added 1 teaspoon of crushed red pepper, 1 tablespoon of oil, olive oil would be preferred, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, I freshly ground it, 10 pepperoncini. Those are those pickled Italian peppers that you get in a big jar, 10 of those. And what I do is I cut off the stems on a plate, and I leave the juice and the seeds. And I put the juice and the seeds in the pot. About 1/4 of an onion, fresh, cut into small pieces. A 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. About a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, but you could certainly use the equivalent in fresh garlic. 1/2 of a habanero pepper from the freezer. So in the summer, when we have these habaneros, we freeze them, and then we take them out throughout the rest of the year. And what I do is I cut 2 cups of ProPure water, and a jalapeno pepper that was from the freezer as well. Add a couple cups of ProPure water, put it in the pot, and as it cooks, turn it several times, an hour if you're there, or once an hour. I bring it up to a boil quickly on the front burner, the high burner, and then I move it to the back burner, which is this small, slow simmer burner. Cook it with a lid on it, and the peppers fall apart, the pepperoncini falls apart, and and I shred it with a fork, with 2 forks, as it becomes more and more tender. That's it, and it makes a fabulous, fabulous sandwich. Now the problem with it goes really fast. It does not last long in the refrigerator. So within a day and a half, it's all gone.
What do you mean last long? It goes bad, or everybody scarfs it down?
No, well, no matter where you put it, they find it. They find it in the refrigerator, and they just eat. It doesn't last very long in terms of it's consumed very, very quickly. It's that good. And I believe it is as good or superior to what a restaurant in Chicago might make. And here's what I found. I've looked at lots of recipes on the internet, and many of them say the same thing. Add Italian salad dressing mix. One of these packages that you might buy at the food store or the supermarket. No, it's not necessary. The ingredients that I mentioned, that's all you need. You do not need to get one of those packets of flavoring, because I'm sure you have, most of us have enough flavors and spices in our cabinet already. So that's the recipe, and I got to tell you, I'd love to hear from our class if they've done anything like that, and maybe some of their recipes. But here's part of the genesis of this. As we are moving more and more off-grid here at the farm, and as we're looking at this solar power generation, I'm putting up more panels, and I'm building this array. And I'd like to tell you about that too, and get your take on it. But the frame for the array. But the problem that we have is we just can't use electricity for everything. So, for example, that crock pot that might be wasting heat on the countertop all day long, that's not going to be a viable option going forward as much as it is today. If we just want to plug into the utility grid and we want to run a crock pot at 150 watts, it's not a problem. You just have to pay for it. But going forward, trying to do that from solar doesn't make sense. That's why the cast iron came in. And where's this cast iron come from? Well, I bought a few pots and pans, at yard sales as I travel, kind of like what you do. And they're cheap. But you got to have them. You got to have them. Kurt, your thoughts before we
I've done a whole show on cast iron, and I have the history of cast iron cookery, and cast iron is what has created civilization, and I'll tell you about that.
Okay, so next hour, Kurt Wilson, we're going to do an hour of cast iron, how it works, why it works, what the uses of it are, how do you care for it, why you should have it, maybe what you should pay for it, and what you should avoid, like some of the new stuff. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Kurt Wilson, armchairsurvivalist.com. He's a broadcaster. We'll tell you how to listen. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Kurt Wilson. And we're talking about cast iron today. Cast iron skillets, cast iron pots, cast iron Dutch ovens. And there are a lot of pitfalls. There are a lot of things to think about. And we're going to try to share with you our experiences so far. My grandmother passed down to my mom, who passed down to me, her cast iron pots and pans. And they are from the 1920s, 1930s. And what happened was women have been conned into thinking that it's not a good way to go. It's just too heavy. Just too heavy. Too hard to maintain. Absolutely not true. If you maintain, and we're going to tell you how to do that during this hour, you're going to find out that these will last centuries. Centuries.
As a point to that, when George Washington's mother died, in her will, she bequeathed her cast iron cookware to various members of the family. That's how vital these are. Let me tell you something about cast iron. First off, it didn't just pop up. Somebody had to invent furnaces hot enough to melt iron and metals, and that was around 513 BC in China, and about 1100 AD in England. and then they could make molds out of sand and pour molten metal into the molds. The cooking that people did. Now, you and I talked about Dutch ovens, and there's two kinds. There's the kind that are flat bottom, which would go on a stove, and then there's a kind that have legs, and they usually have 3 legs, and they're for putting on the hearth or in the fireplace to get them, to raise them off from the coals. And these same ones that they put in the hearth or the fireplace have a cast iron lid that has a ridge around it, so that you can take coals and put on top of the Dutch oven, as well as have it sit in the coals. You don't cook it necessarily in a fire. You shift the coals and push it underneath. On the reservation, this is how we cooked, and it would last. Good Lord, they'd make cakes in it, they'd make biscuits in it, and they'd cook bear meat in it, and doing it the way that you're doing, which is like a crock pot on a stove type thing. Bear meat is gamey and tough. And after about 6 hours of boiling and cooking that way, this stuff just falls apart in the fork. But in 1776, a guy named Adam Smith wrote a book, The Wealth of Nations. And in it he explains the societies cannot grow, period, anywhere in the world until they have something to cook in. And that's so they say, he literally says that cast iron cookware, which is the easiest stuff to make, is what has created society. And now we're using these $1.99 aluminum Teflon coated crap pans you buy over at Wally World. Mm-hmm. I think we're going backwards.
You know, I'm looking right now, Kurt Wilson, at a post on Craigslist, and it says 5 cast iron skillets, ROC, Republic of China, several sizes to match, $15. Now, so this guy's got on his counter for display, for our viewing pleasure, 5 of these skillets, if you will, and he only wants $60 for all of them. But it says they're $15 a piece. He's got a 6.5-inch skillet, an 8-inch, 2 10.5 inches, and one's 11 inches. But he says 4 of them are from Taiwan. Now, the quality that I have seen of the Taiwanese cast iron skillets is nowhere near as good as the quality of the older vintage, wherever, Griswold, Erie. Would you agree with that?
Well, here's the dangerous thing about the cast iron comes from China. Now, you're not supposed to do what I'm going to tell you at all, but I went and I had bought a cast iron pan. See, here's the thing. People go to the yard sales and they see this cast iron pan there. And it could be a 7-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, 16, 18, it doesn't matter. And it's covered in crap and it's gross because the people never knew how to clean it.
Right.
And they shy away from it. Well, I'll buy them and I'll tell you the secret to cleaning them. But you get one of these China, you turn it over and you look and you'll say made in China on the bottom. If you were to cook something on that, let's say you clean it all up and everything, and you cook something on that, and then after you're done cooking it, you put it under running cold water, the thing will crack and fracture in half. So you got to be careful about that. You don't ever want to do that. But the Chinese cast iron are thin. They're very, very thin, and they're done just so that people will buy them in the United States. They do not use that kind of crap in China. They don't use those kind of pans in China. I'm on Craigslist right now, and there's Griswold, a tortilla griddle, right? The round one, $70. Griswold is one of the original manufacturers of cast iron. Cast iron was, let's see, I have it right here. The cast iron. See, I did a whole show on cast iron. Because people don't understand it. They don't understand what it is, why it is, or what it's for. They think it's a novelty.
Oh, no.
No,
it's a staple.
Here's a cast iron. Think of this cast iron, okay? So I have a gas stove, and I have this pan that I cook up, and it's a 12-inch diameter, 3-inch deep cast iron pan, and I'm cooking my beef with some seasonings in it to make tacos. So I get all that done, and I take the meat out and I put it in a bowl, and then I quickly scrape the pan, and then I start cooking my tortillas. Well, at that exact instant, all power went out. And people think, oh yeah, so power goes out, I still have gas. No, you don't, because you have secondary and tertiary electric pumps that pump the gas into your house. So the gas went out. But you know what? I didn't care. Cast iron stays hot for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So I was able to cook my tortillas on that cast iron pan that was in the process of cooling down. But you have, if you want to really get some information, you go to Wikipedia and you look up cast iron cookware. And there's way more than most people would ever imagine. Griswold, Vollrath, Wagner, Atlanta Stove Works, Lodge. Lodge is the oldest cast iron manufacturing company in the world. They have been making it now for so long it's ridiculous, and they still make it in America. It was 1896 when they started, and it is the only one still made in America from that long ago. There are other companies that are now making cast iron cookware, but I'm telling you something, this cast iron cookware you get from Lodge, you can go to anywhere, even Wally World sells it. And you can pick up a 12-inch thing for like $30, a frying pan with a lid. Now, it's rough, and we were talking about that. It's kind of rough, and they are pre-seasoned at the factory now. They used to not be. And I'll tell you how they season it. Is after they've cleaned the pan, they're on this hanging conveyor belt. And these pans go through a room that is spraying them with oil, soy oil. It's just spraying and spraying and spraying and keeping it's 350 degrees in that room. And that's how they pre-treat it. But the new up-and-coming cast iron companies, and forget China, they're not even in the running. That's just, they're worth a dollar as an emergency. That's it. Any pan made in China, I don't care how big it is, it's worth $1 because you don't know if it's going to fracture on you at any time. But these companies, some of these things, you're going to spend $200 for a 12-inch pan. $200. Costco sells Lodge, and those are good deal if you find it at Costco. But some of these companies, but I'll tell you a trick. And we were talking about how you said they were too rough.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm talking about the new Lodge pans. As I've looked on the internet, I've looked at the texture of the surface. I believe it's rougher than I'd like. The ones that I've inherited from my grandmother are absolutely smooth, easy to clean, and non-stick. And they don't look crusty. I mean, if you look at it, you'd say, wow, it's black. It's black from the color black, but it's not black from grease stuck on, because I do something that I probably shouldn't do. I actually wash it with dishwashing detergent and
oh my God.
Well, it works. It works for me, but
yes,
I clean it right away. Right away.
No, never.
Right away.
Never. I don't care. Never use any soap on cast iron. And I'll tell you, one, you don't want to do that because you will strip all the seasoning off, and two, it will it goes into the pores of the iron and it'll stay there, and you'll be putting it back on your food. You get a bristle brush, a round headed brush, and oil and salt.
Okay,
I don't care.
I can switch.
Bad. Yeah, I don't care how bad you do this thing. Now you wait for the pan to cool a little bit, and you can put a little water in it to soak if you're cooking something that's kind of crudded up inside. But when you're done and you're ready to clean it, first you scrape out everything. Okay, and then you take this brush, and you can use water. My wife says no, but you little bit of water in there, and you scrub with the brush real quick, around, like a dishwasher brush, dishwashing brush. And then you rinse it out, and then you put some oil in there and sprinkle some salt, and that's what you actually are washing it with.
Now, the purpose of the salt, is that for abrasiveness? What is the purpose of the salt?
Yes. Okay, so oil and a little salt and your brush, and you scrub it like that, and then you rinse it, and then you'll put a little oil in there, and we turn the burner on for a little bit. I want the pan to get about at least 120 degrees, and the oil will kind of pull itself into the pores. But never use any kind of detergent or soap. Never use a scraping, like a scraper pad. Okay. Use that soft brush.
Okay, I will switch. I'll tell you though, the secret to cleaning them is right away.
Oh,
so
yeah.
as soon as you use it, in the sink it goes, a little bit of water, and if you're cooking some scrambled eggs, they'll come out. It will clean instantly, absolutely instantly. And I do what you do. I put it right back on the stove, heat it up, and dry it off with the heat from the stove. We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson's with us. Hey, Kurt, how do we listen to you on the radio? You're a broadcaster and been doing it for a long time. How do we catch your weekend broadcast?
Well, you go to armchairsurvivalist.com, at armchairsurvivalist.com, and it'll tell you how to listen to me. If you look on the left-hand side of that page, you'll see the little nipper dog listening to the RCA Victor gramophone. That's my podcast download section. You can go there and download any of my shows of the current year. I'm on Sundays 2 to 4, and I broadcast out of my bunker in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, to my engineer, who's the same engineer that GCN uses, and he puts me up on satellites, shortwave towers. I broadcast. The Navy broadcasts me on the ships at sea, and so I never know where I'm going to end up. But that'll tell you how to listen to me. You can listen on the website, or you can do the download thing to do your phone. And I don't know this stuff, all this technical downloading to the phones and pushing it to this and pulling it from there and all that crap. I'll let Todd, the engineer, figure that stuff out.
You're talking about Todd Waite?
Yeah.
Yeah. Todd was engineering for us as well on satellite over North America and Europe and Africa. Good man. Wonderful guy. Yeah.
Oh, he knows his stuff. Yeah. So that's how you can listen to me.
Great. So, Kurt, I'm on eBay right now. I'm looking at some vintage cast iron cooking supplies, tools. And I bought Mrs. Finelli something. I don't normally buy things for, presents. But I decided that we needed to get, she needs a waffle maker. So I was looking, and yeah, we've got one of these electric ones, but that's not going to work. So I found a vintage, made in America, cast iron waffle maker with a base. And what happens is you open this thing. It has a top and a bottom. It's round. It's the one I bought was called a number 8, and it was made around mid-1920s, literally. In the mid-1920s. I'm looking at one that is a little nicer, made by Griswold, $144.99. Now, this is a 100-year-old waffle maker. Now, this will sit on a gas stove, and you heat it from the bottom, and then you pour in the what you're going to cook to make your waffles, and then you flip it over. It has 2 handles, and then you open these handles, and you take out your waffle. And this will last another several hundred years easily if you don't drop it or crack it or break it or abuse it. And so I think that this is something that I wanted to get for Mrs. Finelli. It was about $50 with shipping included to our farm. I think it's a great way to go, and there are plenty of them on eBay. You can pick them up at antique stores for about the same price. Now, the one that I selected has wire handles, meaning not wood. Now, I think wood would be a lot nicer in terms of being cool. However, I don't think it will last as long. And if I want to, if I decide that this thing needs to go in the outside wood furnace for a little bit to clean it up, depending on what I see when we get it, I'd rather have the wire handles. Some of them have cast iron handles. Now, if you want, you can get a cheap one made in ROC, Republic of China, for half the price. Half the price. But I'm not going to do it.
No, and the other thing that I tell people, I don't care what it is you get from China, it's contaminated one way or the other. I don't care if it's underwear or cast iron cookery. Before you even think to use it, you need to wash the heck out of it. But anything from ROC, any cast iron from ROC is it's a potential risk. When I was a kid, and you're going to like this, when I was a kid, this friend of mine, I grew up with him, and we'd go camping all the time, and he'd make these sandwiches, and he had this little square clamp thing. It was the cast iron with a hinge on one end, and you would open, and it was flat on both sides, and you'd open this thing up, and you'd put your sandwich in it, and you'd close it down, and it had handles that were about 2 feet long, that were cast iron, wrapped in wood. and you would hold it over a fire, and it would cook your whatever you put inside of that. And we used to make the best trout grilled cheese sandwiches in the world when we were up camping. And he was thinking, years later, he goes, I want to make those. Nobody's making those. Well, the one he had was made in 1902, and the only ones made like that now are aluminum from China.
Yep. And be careful, because if you're looking for Dutch ovens, you might find a few of them available that are made out of aluminum. Unacceptable. Unacceptable for use in cooking. Aluminum is toxic. Kurt Wilson and I will be right back. Kurt, I've been thinking about what my opinion is on buying some cast iron cookware. And my opinion at this point hasn't changed from what I've thought previously. Vintage is the way to go. You don't have to buy it for show quality, but vintage is the way to go because the cast iron is better, it's smoother, it's stood the test of time, and it works really well. I'd rather have that than new right now. And
I got to interject because you mentioned the word smoother, and I kept trying to remember this and tell you this, but I keep getting pushed off on a tangent. Okay, to smooth out the inside of the pans, on your drill, you have this. You can get a bit that goes in that is stainless steel bristles. Mm-hmm. Okay, you polish the inside of the pan with that high speed, and you just polish the inside of the pan, all the inside and the sides, and just polish and polish and polish, and it'll take all the rough edges off. Mm-hmm. I used to do that for a living. I was an American steel worker, and I did that on H-beams. But that's what you do, is you polish the inside, and then you wash, then you clean it up and all that. And it changes everything. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm looking at eBay right now, for $27.71. I can buy a brand new Dutch oven, cast iron lid, cast iron pot, shipped, delivered in my hands for $27.71. But I cannot buy a vintage one. I can't even get a vintage one shipped. If I got it for free, it would cost more just for the shipping.
Is that from China? Is that from China?
Yeah, it's a Chinese one. Yeah.
Now is that shipping from China?
No. Well, I think it's domestically, but yeah, actually you can get some shipped from China as well. But what I'm saying is, someone who would sell one, let's say you were selling one or I were selling one on eBay, it would cost us about $30 to ship one of these pots. To someone, okay? And that's the problem. So if you can get one for $30 and it's $30 for shipping, you're now at $60 for one of these. So if you can find one at a yard sale, that's probably your best bet. Now, you and I were talking about something that I think needs a little more elaboration. I have this I think it's 5 quarts. It might be 6 quarts. It's vintage, and it's what's on the stove right now cooking the Italian beef. But I did not have the lid for it. Now, you found an all-glass lid. I'm using a Revereware stainless steel lid that fits perfectly, and it works great for this particular application. But you found an all-glass solution, right, for these 5-quart Dutch ovens.
Yeah, Walmart sells them. And you just measure, the lip from lip to lip, and the height of your at the top of your pan, whatever it is, frying pan, pot, Dutch oven, it doesn't matter, and just go to Walmart, and they have glass covers, glass lids with a mm-hmm. wooden handle in the middle of it, wooden knob, and it works perfect because then you can actually see in there what's going on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, just
and you
so
can
you
put
know,
that in the dish.
Yeah, that you can put in the dishwasher if you want. But just so you know, Vince, I have in my store in Hayden, Idaho, the Survival Enterprises store, I have a bunch of cast iron cookware, and I also have all kinds of the Revereware that my wife and I used. We've used it for 30 years, and it was about 20 years old when we got it. And I have about 50 extra lids. I don't know what happened to the pots and pans that went with them, but I got about 50 extra lids there. If you need any lids, just let me know, because I've got so many extra ones, I don't know what to do with them.
Class, if you want to contact Kurt, just go to survival, SE1, SE the number 1.us, or you can go to armchairsurvivalist.com and you get in touch with them. Kurt, I'm so glad you mentioned Revereware. I'll tell you why. At one point in time, I believe that Revere cookware was the finest overall, best value solution you could get in American cookware by far, in terms of simplicity, in terms of durability, in terms of easy to clean. However, through the acquisitions of the company that started manufacturing Revereware, it got of lesser and lesser and lesser quality over time, to the point where the latest version, I bought a set on eBay, and it included one of these little tiny pots that might be about a quart. This thing, they have thinned this out so much that when you take this, well, I don't know about
China now.
I think this one was Indonesia.
Okay.
This particular one has the black handle. It looks like Revereware. It's got the copper bottom. It's got the stainless steel surface. It's got the rolled edge. It's got the lid. It's got everything. But if you put this empty little pan on the stove, it will fall over all by itself. It does not. It does not weigh enough. The actual metal of the pot itself is so light that the handle is heavier and it will tip over.
Yeah,
it's unacceptable. You cannot leave it alone without something in it, or it will fall over. So here's the word to the wise. So, class, if you're thinking about buying a set of Revereware and it says, it's got this stamp on the bottom and other stamps, and you're wondering what's what, there is a huge difference in the thickness of the metal. And what they did was they electroplated the copper bottom, and it went from, let's say, full thickness to half thickness. Half thickness of stainless steel.
Don't buy any new. You do not buy any new Revereware, period. You do not do it, because it's crap. It's from China or Indonesia or some other third world country. No, you do not buy that. If you want it, and this is why people don't buy them. And same thing with cast iron. They go to yard sales and go, oh, look at those pots. They're gross, disgusting, and ugly. There's secrets to cleaning and preparing and seasoning. You also have to season Revereware properly. But I went and I see this 1 quart, 2 quart, and a 5 quart pot with the lids and all the ceramic, because the handles and the lids are type of ceramic. They're perfect. And she wanted $5 for them. And nobody was even looking at them, because they were baked on crap on the inside, and the copper looked black. So I bought them. You know how you clean them? There's a secret to all of this, and I know it all. You use oven cleaner, and you spray the pot down, and you put it outside somewhere, okay? You spray it down with oven cleaner and let it soak the garbage off as much as possible, and then you can clean the stainless steel from there. Copper bottom, secret. You might know this already, Vince, but to clean the copper bottom, you don't use abrasion. You don't use a brush. You don't use anything.
Nope.
Ketchup. You put ketchup on it.
I was going to say cook some tomato soup and let it spill on the side.
No, you put ketchup. You buy the cheapest garbage ketchup you can find, and all ketchup is garbage. And you put it on the bottom, and you sprinkle some salt on back again to the salt as the abrasive, and you just use your hand. And that copper bottom comes out like brand new, and it'll just shock you. That's what we did to all of the Revereware we have for sale over at our store. People come in and go, oh, that looks almost new. I said, well, it's about 40 years old. What? They can't believe it.
You're right. You're right. I want to share something with you, and then Kyle's joining us from Montana. I wanted to get a few more pieces of the flatware that we have, and I'll tell you what the pattern is. It's Oneida, Oneida. We've had it since we were married, and it's the same pattern my mother-in-law had. But it'd be nice to have a few more pieces. So I went to eBay to get vintage, and I wanted to clean it, because I don't know how it's been used, and I put it in an ultrasonic cleaner, and it absolutely turned vintage Paul Revere pattern flatware into magnificent, looks brand new. So you can do that, class. You can. Kyle in Montana, welcome. I was thinking about you as I was cooking this morning, and I thought, your wife Sharon probably has some really fabulous recipes, and I hope to be able to chat with her, and I hoped you'd call in, and here you are. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, Kurt. Yeah, she's a cast iron cooking queen, I'll tell you that. She's cooked roasts and stuff on our wood stove, and just, you can't imagine. I mean, whatever we've tried to do. Anyway, I was going to weigh in on something, for cooking pans, something else people might want to think about to look at. You remember a long, long time ago, they used to have that hammered heavy tin that you
Yes.
could season just like cast iron. You season it the same, you clean it the same. I picked those up at garage sales. I've got a whole setup from the tiniest one to the really, really big one. Because if you're cooking for 4 or 5 guys around hunting camp, it's just really nice to be able to, you can practically, the big one, you can throw the eggs and bacon and all in there at the same time, enough for 2 or 3 guys. And so they're really handy as well. And they've got an insulated handle, and they go over a wood fire, if you're out camping or something like that, they go over a wood fire really, really well.
There you go.
But
there you go.
anyway, yeah, but my wife has got so many different things. If it's been done in a crock pot, practically, she has done it. I was going to mention to you too, Vince. You're going to be able to go off grid here as soon as you can get all this other set up. But if it's a sunny day, you can run your crock pot, and you could even run a bread maker during the middle of the day when you've got so much electricity, so much power coming off of them panels that it's just going to burn off in heat anyway. And you might as well use that, because your solar controller is going to burn it off as heat once the batteries are full. And, so you can, we've done it. I mean, with way less power, way less panels than you have and than I have now. But when we lived out on the farm, I only had 1,000 watts coming in. But when it was a full sunny day, man, you could run a bread maker, and you could run a crock pot during the day.
There you go. Yeah, I found one I really like, an electric crock pot, and my plan was to do exactly what you said, and it uses 75 watts on low. So I was thinking that would be a way to go, but it's vintage. It's made by, let me look it up. But it's on its way in. Hold that thought, Kyle. We'll be right back. Kyle Harris is with us, and so Kyle, we're 3 frugal guys right here, just saving money and getting by with good quality products for way less than others might pay. And so cast iron is something that Sharon is expert in. Please ask her if she'll come on the air with me, in the next few weeks and talk about some of her recipes and what really works. Would that be okay?
You bet. Hey, and speaking of seasoned opinions, like the intro into your program, I just wanted to put out there, if you cook something on that cast iron, like on your wood stove or something like that, there is just something about the flavor of it that is just absolutely amazing. I don't know what it is different, but you can taste the difference. I can taste the difference between a Dutch oven and a crock pot even. And you cook soups and all kinds of things, But anyway, I'll let you guys finish up the program. But sure, she's sitting right here with me, and she'd be glad to come on with you.
One last thing, I received from your family, from very young people, some handmade cards. Thank you so much. Would you please thank them for me?
You bet. That's my grandbaby, so you bet.
Yeah. It's on the refrigerator right now. The art is on the refrigerator. Kyle, thanks so much for being with us.
You bet. See you, Beth. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Kurt Wilson, we have the most wonderful friends whom we haven't met. Kyle is one. And, I don't know how to explain this to our class, but we have an extended family. And people who are genuinely concerned about each other, people who will spend their time helping without their hand out saying, I gave you like a half hour of time and, you owe me. None of that happens. It's just genuine friendship, genuine concern, and I can't explain it. Miles from Europe and I were talking about this, and I cannot explain how this has happened. Maybe it's just a bunch of independent thinkers all going in the same direction, finding out very similar things, applying similar values, and being willing to share without compensation, without any reward, without any thought of what's in it for me, from any of us.
What makes you think there's no reward?
Well, okay. There is a reward in the feeling that we've done something good.
And that's it. People ask me, why have I been on the radio so long? And I said, well, it's to make up for all my all my evilness when I was younger. And the things that you do or don't do affect all of society, believe it or not. People don't quite grasp that, but it does. And I have my shows are always based on, it's only 2 hours a week. So, and I do more research than anybody in the world on my shows. My first hour is news. The second hour is always something to help people with. And I do so much research on it. And to give you an idea, Vince, I did a show on how to do spring cleaning. People don't really know how to clean their house. They don't know. So I do. And I did a whole show on it.
Yeah, 2 months later, use a rake.
You use a rake. I use a weed blower. That works, a leaf blower. But 2 months later, this 12-year-old kid wrote me a letter, and he is in Saskatchewan. And in the letter he says, I listen. My dad listens to you, and I listen to your show on spring cleaning. I never knew this stuff. And I wrote down every single point you did, and I cleaned our house, and my mother was astounded, and now she cleans it and does a better job than she's ever done in her whole life. And so you never know what you say is going to affect who and where.
You're absolutely right. Kurt Wilson, thank you so much for being with us today and spending your time sharing your thoughts on cast iron and trailers.
Give me a call. Give me a call later.
Yeah, I surely will. Class, that's Kurt Wilson. SE1.us. SE, Survival Enterprises, #1.us. Also, armchairsurvivalist.com. You can tune in on the weekends, Sundays. And I think that'd be worth doing. Again, class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.